Hello, everyone. Thank you for checking out this special episode of Really Dicey. My name is Manny, and I am here with...
My name is Linda Evans. I wrote one of the scenarios for the book we're going to be discussing, also known as Druttercup on every social media platform and Twitch, where I stream. I'm also one of the founder members of the Hint Plays actual play RPG channel, Hint_plays on Twitch.
I'm Sara Thompson. I do a lot of disability work in tabletop gaming. So I'm a disability consultant as well as a freelance writer and game designer. And I wrote one of the, as Linda put it, scenarios, adventures for Book of Tales that we're talking about today. And yeah, I'm known as Mustangsart on pretty much everything. Because I'm really unoriginal with my username. It's just that on everything. So yeah, pretty easy to find.
Yeah.
So yes,
call it building a brand and you're fine.
So today we're going to talk about A Book of Tales by our Talsorian games. Very excited about this. So is this a collection of adventures that players and game masters can play?
Yeah, so it's like a collection of short stories that you can either place in amongst your own campaign that like you're doing at home, or you can compile them all together and make them into a long campaign that you play over each other. We actually wrote it so that like every story has like things that connect to other stories, so if you want to do that you can. It's kind of I think it is like the first kind of adventure expansion for the Witcher tabletop, because there's like one adventure at the very end of the core rulebook and that's about it, and it's very short. So this was like like a kind of a big expansion to show people what the Witcher tabletop game can do, especially now that we've there's been some changes to the system and stuff. So yeah, it's been really it's really cool. I think it's really cool that you can just kind of connect every adventure to one another.
Yeah, you can basically take your group, if you want to, you can take them on a tour of the continent, the setting for The Witcher, and you can basically give them the whistle-stop guided tour. Each adventure has an intro and outro on the, if you're playing it as part of the Link series, this and this will happen. If you talk to these people, if you allied yourself with these people, this is how that then connects. And you can take people around all the way from sort of Covert up in the north to right down to Toussaint down in the south, which was of course where Blood and Wine was set in the computer game. Incredibly gorgeous place. And you also get to explore some areas that haven't really been touched upon in the video games. And unless you've plowed through all of the Sapkowski books, you might not know them particularly, might not really have any feel for them. And this really gives you a flavour for the different towns, different kingdoms, in my humble.
Okay. So I assumed originally that maybe these adventures might have been inspired by the novels, but it sounds like the games as well had an impact in your writing.
Yeah, so the Witcher tabletop game, it's like it takes place in the video game canon, which branches off from the books. So basically, when you read the books from like beginning, which is Last Wish, and you read all the way up to Lady of the Lake, I think, and then once you reach the end of that, you jump into Witcher 1, and that's a whole different canon. Essentially, the games, I tell people the games are kind of like really popular fan fiction for what happens. That kind of divert from the main books, and that's kind of where we as the tabletop pick up and take inspiration from. So we've got that nice balance of we can draw things from the books and kind of throw it in and give it a bit of a twist so that like it fits with the video game canon or aesthetic.
If you've played the video games, the canon dating for the role-playing game is pretty much just after the end of Witcher 2, just as Witcher 3 is about to kick off.
Yeah, 1260.
Yeah. And you can place it there so you know roughly what's happening in the world. If you have a check out the end of Witcher 2, you know that there is an invasion coming up from the south, where the Nilfgaardian Empire is road tripping through the northern kingdoms again to fulfill prophecies. And basically, you know roughly where you are, but that's basically it. It's the events of Witcher 3 have not happened yet. The events of Witcher 2 have just happened, and so the ending of that is reverberating onwards. And that kind of underlies the events of both the scenarios and just the setting overall.
I know we don't want to spoil too much, but can you tease us about what type of adventures or what kind of adventures there may be in this book?
There are... It varies from sort of, you are hired to go and do this. Underneath the Ice is you are hired to look into a matter by some fairly powerful individuals who are obviously far too powerful to go and get their own hands dirty. So they hire you and your assorted group of friends to go and figure out what's happened in a very unpleasant place. So there's a certain degree of investigation, there's character interaction there. My scenario is it's a straight up murder mystery. Because when you're given a nice big canvas to play with and said, yes, you can do anything, of course, the first thing you do is, right, I want everybody in a nice closed room murder. Let's do that. And they let me get away with it. But we also get to see the different factions, really. My adventure is set in Mahakam. It's set in the Dwarven Kingdom, which there is nothing about outside of like Thronebreaker. There is very little. Everybody talks about Mahakam, but they don't go there, which you don't. So it's a chance to show people what the inside of Mount Carbon, the Dwarven capital, is like, how the dwarves there differ from, your standard blacksmith you find on the road. And I decided to start a murder mystery. So that's not really a spoiler. That's pretty much from the get-go. I start with a letter saying someone has been murdered. Help. And we take it from there.
Yeah. Mine, like taking over from that, mine is like vastly different what I did. I did Enter the Fighting Pits, which takes place in Clermont, which it had like recently been taken over by Nilfgaard at this point and like brought into the Nilfgaard Empire. So it was really interesting to write from that perspective. And essentially in the novels, Clermont is celebrated for having this, this wonderful arena where all of these sports go on, and betting is like a big thing there. And there's like a whole big culture around it. So like the best way I can describe it is there is in Blood and Wine, when you can do Geralt going through the Knights tournament, if you choose to do that, it's like that, but with the whole party. And you are kind of being used by people who are like the event runners, essentially, because they're all very rich noble elites and they bet on who they think will win and things like that. So it's all about the kind of weird morality of that, but also the very different culture that it is in Nilfgaard as well. And yeah, getting to explore that, and like every time the players progress and move to the next round, there's a party in the evening, so like people can get drunk and whatever. And there are different teams who like you can ally yourself with or cause rivalries with. And there was a really fun bit that I really enjoyed doing, was writing bonds and insults. So like with the with the nobles who are betting on you, you get to talk to them in the evenings, but you have to follow like a set of rules in order to like talk to them properly, because they won't tolerate certain behavior and things like that. And if you end up insulting them, you get some sort of punishment, essentially, which usually comes in the form of like public humiliation, like but having to wear like ridiculous clothes and things like that. But yeah, like that's kind of what I did. Mine's more of like a party thing, but underneath, you know, there's that kind of darker, like how nobles will use poorer or adventurers to their own gain. And yeah, like each night at the parties, there's like an event that goes on, and like you have to investigate what's really going on behind the scenes, which leads up to like the very big, you know, grand finale kind of thing. And it was a lot of fun, and like getting to establish Claremont, which at that point had only really been in the books. I even got to put in Mayor Pennequick, who is like an actual character from the Witcher books, who appears like very briefly, and is mentioned in like one piece of codex in the video games. So I got to like actually fill him out as a character, and like you interact with him every day and that kind of thing. So it was really exciting, getting to just bring like an actual canon character a bit more to life, in a way that players can also engage with them.
There's
Oh, wow.
something I really enjoyed with the dwarves was dwarves don't do magic. They're magic. They're not magic proof, but they just don't do magic. They're magic null. But I wanted to give them, they've always had this really strong ritualistic sense to them. So I was able to create a complete ritual out of nowhere, and stick it in. And this is now part of their history. This is something that's been going on for years. Because I wanted an event that would tie in with the 25-year long, not 25-year long party, the party that happens every 25 years. And I wanted a big event that would resonate with a culture that has a cycle that long, because they're that long lived. So I was able to come up with basically a sort of combination pub crawl and religious ceremony, which just seemed to fit the dwarves perfectly, in the sequence of the Toasting of the Fallen, which is basically paying tribute to heroic actions in the Dwarven kingdom. And it's visiting there, and it's drinking at it and toasting them. And then you finish with the huge Mahakamael festival. And I wanted to give them that sense of history and tie that in a bit. And it was just so nice being able to insert something in that felt like it fit, and it fit with the history and the sort of the personality of the dwarves.
Besides the adventures, are there anything extra in the book? Is there like a section about GM tools or anything like that?
We've got some new weapons. She says she has the PDF in front of her. But we also have, so we have new weapons, we've got some new spells. We've also got 3 new races. And that I did have a lot of fun with, because I got to introduce the werebubs, the Vran, and the gnomes. Just one of each. But I was able to get them in and try and get them in as this is what they're like, or at least this is what this one's like. So we have the Vran are the lizard people, driven from their homes, now live in the mountains. Not the most sensible place for a lizard to live, but hey. Werebubs are beaver people. They are furry head to toe and fierce fighters. And gnomes are some of the oldest inhabitants of the continent. Incredible craftsmen who hang out basically lower down in the mountains than the dwarves, you know, inside deep mines. And it's nice to be able to get those things in which have featured in the books or have been peripherally mentioned in one line halfway down the Polish comic book in one case. It's like, oh look, they're drawn in one panel. Okay, let's look at them. And it's nice to see them in this book with some history, with some personalities, and with some abilities of their own.
Yeah, there are some GM tools as well that kind of go beyond just like the mechanics. Like you said, like because weapons and new races and stuff. But even something as simple as there is a character in my adventure, and she is blind. So we have a section which is just a sidebar to tell a GM like, here's how you can sensitively kind of show that disability, and here's how she deals with her disability, and it includes things like she prefers to face read people, so she'll ask before she puts her hands on your face so she can kind of tell what you look like, and just small things like that, and yeah, like that, like those to kind of really help a GM out in kind of cases where typically like it either wouldn't get like mentioned, or a tabletop game wouldn't really bring it up or put a disabled NPC in that's kind of like at the forefront of the adventure. So yeah, it was really nice that our Talsorian were like really supportive of it and everything. So getting to write that was just great. And yeah, I've had a lot of positive feedback on that in my spare time. But yeah, like beyond just practical tools for mechanics and stuff, we have things like that to help a GM kind of grow as a storyteller, and they can bring to the table, and the kind of experiences that they can show.
I wanted to make sure that dwarves are they're always depicted as a very male-centric culture. You've got the whole, are they even, keeping their women locked away somewhere in a cupboard, so never let them be seen by any non-dwarf. And when I was writing, I thought, hell with that. I really wanted some strong female characters in there. I wanted to show that it's not just a boys' club. So you've got, for want of a better term, the quest giver is a woman. Who is furious. She is a woman who I've allowed to be angry at things, and it was so nice that they let me do that. They didn't do the whole you sure about this? And also it's things like I put in a character who is referred consistently in the GM's material only as they them, and I didn't want to flag it too hard because I felt that might make a GM feel more self-conscious, but I wanted to make it as normal as, okay, so this is a he, I'm just referring to this character as they and them, and consistently, but doing it consistently and doing it as normalized as possible was where I was going with it, to try and make it as just an ordinary thing, but to keep it accurate for that character. So that was something I wanted to get in quite badly, because it just seemed to make sense. There's a range of people, they're all people, so why isn't there as big a range as there is for anything else?
Yeah, and like speaking, as you were saying about like strong women characters as well, I got to write at one of the parties that the players can meet during the contest is just a party of all Skelligan warrior women who are called the Iron Maidens. Yes. And I love them all. And the artwork for them is great, and I wanted to show different body types, so that like, some of them are really like strong, buff, muscular women, and others are like slim and lean, but it's like muscular kind of lean, and showing off different kind of weapons and things that they carry, and them writing their personalities with them, and they're very loud, and they like singing bawdy songs in front of people that generally like in polite conversation shouldn't be sung, but they enjoy doing it. Getting to like bring them to life was really, really fun, because I absolutely love Skellige as well, like the whole culture of it. You know, that kind of Vikings and Celtic energy, and I really wanted to like bring it forward with them. So yeah, they were great fun to write, and they're all like, you know, strong women, who, if you know, if you met them in real life, probably could easily bench press you. That like really, you know, awesome. Yeah, so it was so much fun writing them, and just the amount of variety that our Talsorian really encouraged us to go with was fantastic. So with some of the characters I wrote, because I think my adventure possibly had some of the most NPCs just due to its layout. Was, yeah, like getting to write them from all different places, and they all look different and they all speak differently, and you know, getting to say like, you should use certain words from this character because they come from such and such a place. And like Linda was saying as well, there are two non-binary characters in one of the groups as well, and they just go by they them, well, they go by they he she pronouns, because I kind of wanted to make them like me with, you know, they she pronouns. So yeah, getting to include those, and even in small things like the artwork, like you'll be flipping through and you'll see like prosthetic legs, or you'll see a wheelchair, which was done by Claudio Pozaz in that piece of artwork. It was amazing. You know, just seeing that put in, and like it's not being made out by our Talsorian to be like, look, we're doing this. It's more just like, look, variety, like actual people, which is just great to see. And working on the adventure with them like was an absolute blast. So yeah, getting the kind of creative like liberties that we had, and like how creative we could get with things was wonderful. Yeah, so I just really enjoyed it.
Yeah, the whole process was great.
What is your philosophy of how would you say the Witcher is very different from um, typical sword and sorcery role-playing games, and how did you incorporate that philosophy when you wrote these adventures?
Compared to like sword and sorcery, or even Dungeons and Dragons, The Witcher is so vastly different in that it's grimdark fantasy, gritty fantasy, set in pseudo medieval, you know, Europe, inspired by different European cultures and such. And it's typically the magic. It has this very unique kind of setting where everything has magic running through it, but only certain people can use that magic, and if they can, they only do it for themselves or for selfish means. So like you have that very kind of, unlike D&D where it's like, you know, someone can just easily learn to be a bard, or you know, like find a magic item on the side of the road, or get given a magic item as payment or a birthday gift. Like that's not a thing in The Witcher, unless you're very rich. So yeah, it's kind of unique, and it's a really fun angle to play with, especially when you're trying to figure out how certain things would work, or how are they going to defeat this monster if they haven't got a witcher with them, is usually the biggest question. If they don't have a witcher or a sorceress, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
So we really got to play around with that, and in one of the events in my adventure, like I really kind of got to play with that, and was like, okay, if you don't have a witcher, here's the environment, use the environment to your advantage, and you don't have to be like an amazing warrior to use these small things that, you know, overall it could help you win. um so yeah, it's really fun in that regard. Like I think The Witch is like a great tabletop game because it really encourages you to think outside the box, a lot of the time. But yeah, like from just like having worked on it, it was a challenge sometimes, because you couldn't just like throw something and be like, yeah, they'll be fine with it, like, you know, they'll handle that monster because, you know, they've got such and such magic. And it's like, wait, what if they don't actually have that witcher or a mage, because that could literally mean life and death for these people. So yeah, getting to work with that, it's like it's really good, I found, for my writing process, because like I got to think about things more than just directly. It was like how could they roundabout way kind of do this thing and still achieve the result. So yeah, it was really fun to write for.
What I find is it is a grimdark setting, no argument there. It is so heavily Slavic flavored, even when you've got names and things drifting in from other parts of the world at random. It's got that slightly grim, quite black sense of humor. It's got a really solid dark sense of humor running underneath everything. So yeah, things are horrible. Things are regularly terrible. Something could crawl out of the ground and leave you a greasy smear on the carpet, and it wouldn't even notice. So in that regard, you have to balance it out with how would people react under that sort of situation. You know, you cannot be depressed the entire time, because that would be no fun to play. So it's nice to be able to weave in the occasional dark joke or ridiculous situation that you're left in. But yeah, you're absolutely right, and you cannot rely on the whole, oh, it's fine, we've got a witch, it's great, you know, we've got 2 sorceresses over there, that's fine. You've got 2 sorceresses in the party. The odds are pretty good that they're going to have a fight at some stage. My party is allergic to combat. I run a game periodically, and as far as I can tell, my players are just allergic to combat. They don't like fighting. They've looked at the critical rules, and they have no truck with that. So there are other ways you work around. You find other ways of tackling things. You make other options available. So can people talk their way out of situations? Obviously not if it's something armored and, you know, more tentacles than legs, hurtling towards you at a rate of knots. But you give people the opportunity to think their way around a situation rather than simply reaching for your +1 Holy Avenger of awesome. You can't even guarantee people will have silver weapons. Monsters in this are frequently high-end allergic / vulnerable to silver. You can't rely on the party having access to silver weapons at all. Not even not having a witcher, they may not have something that could hurt what they're likely to be facing. So you have to give them workarounds. You have to not lock it down to there is only one way to defeat this creature, or there is only one way to get out of this situation. Because if you do, they're going to die. Combat in this game is dangerous, and you have to leave openings, give them options. And it's a very, very different feel to D&D. I mean, I run D&D, play D&D. God knows how long I've been playing D&D on and off. I'm in the AD&D second edition campaign at the moment. Hugely different feel to The Witcher. It is darker, it's nastier. In many ways, it's more real world, despite the large threads of magic running through the setting. It just feels that little bit more grounded because the people are more realistic, in my humble. They just feel a little bit more vulnerable and less, we are heroes, we will go and be heroic. They're more likely to be doing it for the money or just to survive.
Yeah, we with the adventures and in the Witcher TTRPG in general, we try and replicate that. You know, in the video games, Geralt has multiple choices, and you know how you handle a monster. You don't always have to kill it, and you know, seeing like, you know, the Geralt's like everything isn't black and white, it's very gray with Geralt. So trying to keep that mindset when you're writing things, and it's like, okay, like I know that they could kill this monster if they wanted to, but I want to add some humanity to it, because maybe this monster is sentient, or maybe it's a curse and a person turns into a monster and doesn't realize they're a monster, like with lycanthropy is like that in The Witcher. And giving them the opportunity, instead of rushing in to kill a monster, they can instead kind of step back, assess the situation, and be like, okay, we can actually go and research a ritual, or try and try this like old method of like lifting a curse and things like that. So like things like burying blubberkins underneath the threshold of the door and things like that, like there being other options, because like you said, combat's extremely dangerous, and the game kind of encourages that and makes players aware of that if you rush head in like you can kind of do in D&D, and you'll probably be all right, especially with 5th edition. If you kind of run in, you'll be all right, unless you're playing something like a wizard with like 2 hit points. But like if you're playing a bard or something, and you come across a monster and it's like, oh, actually I remember a song and it has like how to undo the curse, and maybe we can go find a witcher or somebody like a peller who's proficient in magical knowledge. How could we then work around it? So yeah, the game really tries to offer what the video game offers, I guess, in terms of realizing that not everything is like black and white, not everything you fight is evil or good. Like the lesser and middling kind of thing that Geralt talks about, lesser, great, and middling. It's all the same. And yeah, we really try to reflect that in the games. And I think with Book of Tales, I think we, like, in my humble opinion, we really nailed that. Like everybody who wrote an adventure for it, we really kind of, absolutely nailed that angle of everything is gray, and we present these stories and just kind of go, have at it to the GM and the players. Make your choices.
There's very few people that you can go, I'm going to 100% side with this faction, or I'm going to 100% side with them, or they are clearly evil. Everybody you talk to in the scenarios, I did have a return. I'm looking forward to running yours, by the way. Is you're going, I kind of, I don't necessarily agree with what they're doing, but I kind of see where they're coming from on this. And it should make you think. It's not so, a huge monster is annihilating a mining camp. Okay, D&D, right? Okay, everybody armor up, cast the spells, and off we go. Witcher, did the miners piss it off? Has somebody been raiding its nest? Have they been detonating charges in the course of their work, and it's aggravated it? It encourages you to look at those sideways options and look at things in a little bit more depth than this is evil, we will kill it now.
Is there anything about the book that I haven't asked you about that you want to share?
I don't think so, unless no, I don't want to like give things away. But there are for people who really like enjoy the novels and are like big novel buffs for it. There are really nice nods to the novels throughout. I just saw it on the PDF because I've got it up just to help with answering questions. But I put a nod in to the Song of the Wolf, which appears on one page in Baptism of Fire, sung by Dandelion, about Geralt. And I was like, okay, it's this tiny little verse and it's going to be being performed in the background, and players can make an education check, and if they recognize what it is, they're like, oh, it's one of Dandelion's like really old songs that isn't sung much anymore, and it's about Geralt. Just adding very small nods like that, and like all the way through in all the different stories there were like lots of little just tiny nods to things that happened in the books, whether they've got like a fresh kind of twist on them or they are just presented as is. Yeah, it's all, yeah, it's just really nice, like a nice kind of little, you know, appreciation for the novels, as much as we can get away with putting in. Yeah, which was really, really fun, and it was really nice to see it in like all the other writers' like work as well.
I loved things. I went on a deep dive when I was researching the dwarves, and I went on this kind of rabbit hole. I fell down, and in the various books you have references to how it's going to sound so daft, how beards are styled, because that symbolizes how traditional the dwarf is. Do their sympathies lie with sort of the wider, more integrated human communities, or are they secretly Scoia'tael sympathizers? That sort of thing. And I made sure that everybody had a description as to how their beard is styled, how their beard is plaited. Is it brushed out loose? Is it, you know, braided elaborately? And if you've read the novels, although you can't necessarily pick out a character that says, oh, what's this mean? Squirtle. It should have the right flavor. It should help you direct the attitude of the characters based, you know, is this person likely to be hostile to humans? Based on their appearance, based on the way that they've presented themselves. You know, are they harking back to an older style of isolationism with this? And it was so nice to be able to do that. And it did provoke a bit of a, you did what? When I was describing the beards and things. But then it was so nice to see it in the artwork. People, the artists really went to bat for us on conveying those appearances the way they needed to be done to give that element to those characters, and it was just so nice to see. And also I'm just chuffed that I threw in a side reference in an early encounter in my scenario to an image of a little bee waving a tankard. It's a logo, and I was really hoping I could get it in sort of a final scene. And when I was looking at the artwork for the Mahkamael festival at the end, I suddenly realized that they've managed to get that in on a barrel. So I was just zooming and zooming and zooming on the picture going, hang on a minute. And they did. So it's little things like that there is a nice through line on everything. Things aren't forgotten from early references, earlier scenarios in the book. Family names carry on between the scenarios. You know, so-and-so's a cousin of someone else who you encountered 2 scenarios earlier, that sort of thing. There is a nice through line there, and that's always good to see. It makes it feel like a more unified whole than just individual compartmentalized stories.
Wow, so I'm still waiting for my copy to come in the mail.
Yes,
and and I can't wait for it. And now hearing what you both had to say about it, I really, really can't wait for it. It sounds fantastic. But yes, to our viewers out there, thank you for watching. Stay safe out there. Please get your shots. I believe the book, A Book of Tales by R. Talsorian, is out on, you could get it on print and on PDF. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, you can get it currently PDF from DriveThruRPG or their website. And I think books are like, you order it and everyone's kind of waiting now for the physical books to arrive.
Yeah. I'm doing my retriever sitting under the door, under the letterbox. It's hopeful expression. If your local bookstore is part of the Bits and Mortar program, then you can buy the physical book or pre-order the physical book if your store is doing that, and you will get the PDF for free if you buy through a Bits and Mortar store. So that's a reason to support your local game stores, which is far less common in the UK. Where are they all? And
they're all in Brighton from my experience.
Yes. I looked at that. All of them. Brighton and London. And if otherwise, you can just buy the print copy from the Talsorian store, but that doesn't get you the Bits and Mortar PDF as well. So it's worth trying to support locally if you can.
Oh, excellent. Thank you for sharing that. So yes, everyone out there, thank you so much for watching. Be safe out there and have a great day.